Now, if many of you don't know, here's a tip for you today. If you have a dream of opening up a store and you don't know how to get into, having your own store, you can always go down to your local mall and see if they have any temp spaces available. So what I did was I found a store that used to be it was like a sit and sleep, and they went out of business. Now, what happens in shopping centers and in malls is that when a major, which is like your Wetzel Pretzels, your Apple stores, anything that has like a national brand to it, when they're in a mall situation, they sign a long-term lease. And when that lease is up and they decide to leave, then the store may sit vacant for a while. And so what the mall tries to do is they try to get people to fill in until they find another national tenant or a big brand. So you can go into a mall as a temporary store, and therefore you don't have to do the major things that are required of new store owners, which is like building out a huge marketing outside of your store. You can actually use a temp sign out front. You go basically month to month, so you're basically just holding a space until they find like a larger tenant. And this not only gives the mall, a vacancy temporarily, and temporarily could be 1 to 2 years. I mean, you don't know how long a temporary lease can last for you. It could be 1 to 2 years. It could be a couple months. But it gives them some income while they're trying to find a national brand, and it gives you the experience to see if this might be something that you want to pursue, because when you have a retail location in like a mall setting, it can be really, really expensive. I'm talking thousands of dollars, and not just your rent, it's the upkeep. Like, you're responsible for a lot of things, like the air system. They want a build out plan. You have to build out your space. And you have to get it approved by the mall. You have to redo the windows. I mean, it's a lot. It can cost you $50,000 to $100,000 to do a major store build out on a mall space. And for me, it's like, I'm never gonna own the mall. I'm never gonna own this space in the mall. So why would I spend thousands of dollars to build out something that is owned by the mall? So I that would never work for me anyway. But a temp store gives you the chance to actually see how it feels to be a big player, in a space like a mall, and you get to really test it out and see if it's something that you want to pursue long term and sign a major lease. Now, I will talk a little bit about a mall space. If you happen to get one and they do find a tenant, if there's another opening somewhere in the mall, they may shift you to that. A few things that did happen that was a little bit different from like my downtown store, is when you're in a mall space, they also, at least the mall that I was in, they also take a percentage of your gross sales for the month. So everything that you make, you have to turn in, or at least I had to turn into the mall at the end of the month. They would go over the receipts, and then I would need to pay a percentage, not just my rent, but I also had to pay a percentage of my sales. And so that's just something to know when you're getting into like a mall space. Now, the independent space I had, in the downtown area, that wasn't a part of it. So depending on your lease, it can vary and be different depending on the lease, the location, and the landlord. Almost done here. So I was in my mall store, and one thing about malls is that I think at the time that I opened, which maybe it was, I don't remember if it was 2016 or so, I can't quite remember. Who wants to see my shirt? Is that cute? It's for a brother of a sister whose shirt I made, and the mom ordered one for the son. So the thing about the mall is that, okay, let's go over here so we can talk about the mall, okay? Let's go over here for a minute. I gotta, okay, let's go sit over here. All right, this way I can focus on you and not my shirt, because I've got to make a couple more things right now. But the thing about the mall is that when you're in the mall space, they take a percentage, plus you have your rent. Now, mind you, being a temp in a mall is way cheaper than being a permanent store. And a permanent store has way more costs than a temp store. So I would choose a temp store every time if you are lucky enough to find a mall space that you can set up in and test out selling your products. So the mall is busy during the weekends, at least in my area. Now, the rest of the week, it can be dead and you have nobody coming through. So with a mall store, you have to abide by their guidelines of hours of operation and times that you're open, whether that's seasonal times change, and you have to be there a lot longer. So you're looking at approximately 11-hour days there. Now, in a mall, you can't just close your doors. Now, in my downtown store, if I wanted to close up my shop early and go home, I could do that. But when you're in a mall setting, the mall dictates your time, your hours, and how long you're there. So if the mall says, you have to open at 10 a.m. and we close at 9, those are the hours. So that is something to keep in mind if you're going to go into a mall temp store. They were not busy during the week too much. There was a few people trickling in and out. I had to have employees to cover all these shifts because remember, I had part-time employees. And so I think at that time I maybe had 3 or 4 girls working, rotating a shift, because 11 hours a day, I had to stay open. So I always had to have somebody there. Now this mall was about 40 minutes from my home. So anytime an employee called in, I had to be there because you have to open up. Management tends to walk through the mall certain times of the day and they're looking at your store, they're checking things. I mean, sometimes it's helpful. I remember the mall owner coming through and he said, you have this rack sitting outside here and I want to show you something. And let me see if I can get a hanger and show you what he showed me. Hold on. Did you guys hear that crash and bang? Okay, so I had all of my clothes on the rack hanging like this. And they were outside the store door, okay? So that way people could walk by, browse and touch and feel and all of that. And he said, look, if you're gonna have a rack and it's gonna be sitting outdoors, you need to turn one of these this way and one of these that way, so that if somebody walks by and they grab your whole thing, this locks on the pole, okay? So you see how now it's like, let's see if I can do something. So now, like you can't just grab, okay? But if they're both like this, somebody can come and take it. So that was a pretty cool thing that he taught me to do like that, okay? That's your lesson for the day. There you go. But anyway, so every other hanger I needed to crisscross like that on the rack that actually sat outside the mall. One of the things, if you're gonna choose, say like a mall location, one of the things that my temp shop was right next to Wetzel Pretzel. Not a good idea. So of course you wanna have customers and you wanna be friendly and nice, but I would have people coming in every day just chomping on, this is my coffee, but chomping on like cinnamon pretzels and buttery dips, and they would come over, they would grab the things on the rack and, oh, how cute, oh my gosh, oh, and they were touching all these things with food on their fingers. That was horrible, because then I ended up losing merchandise because I had grease stains or cheese stains or cinnamon stains from next door, and then people would bring in their sodas and drinks, and so unfortunately I became a store that I didn't want to become. I had to start putting up signs around the store. No food or drink. Know this, know that. It just, you don't know who you're going to be until you're in the situation. But I had to protect the merchandise, and especially the product that I made by hand, because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't damaged. So we ended up with this huge like trash bag of damaged goods that we couldn't sell in the store. And I would have people come in and they would try on, the shoes or the clothes, or they would break them. And then of course now that's loss. So there's a lot when you're dealing with, the public in that sense of just trying to protect your merchandise from, like I said, stains. I know like in major stores, the problem that I've seen a ton of times is the ring around the collar, the makeup ring. Have you ever went in a store and it's just like brown makeup, a lipstick from women, we're pulling on and off the shirt. So, that's when you have the loss of your merchandise in those ways. So the other thing about the mall was constantly trying to change out my window. My display window, and I spent hours upon hours at that store. I made it look like a beautiful wonderland, and if I can find some old pictures, I will put them up, and so you can see what my store looked like. But I just loved it. It was just too slow though, and the weekends were good. The holiday season was amazing, but other than that, it was just trickles of people. And I had to maintain that 11 hours per se a day. And I had to maintain payroll and workman's comp and insurance in case somebody walked into my store and fell down. So there's a lot that, went into it. And my rent was pretty reasonable. The rent wasn't the problem, but also one of the things that you have to think about when you're going into a store for that many hours a day are the lights. The lights ended up costing me so much. Thank goodness there was a Lowe's pretty close, but the store had so many lights and spotlights in it. But every couple weeks, a light bulb would go out, and I would have to go to this hardware store, rebuy these big, they were kind of like floodlights back then, put them up, keep changing them out because we needed spotlights to show down on the merchandise. And so, I also ended up, I had the little store, and like I said, I bought merchandise for the little store, but now I'm in a space that's like 5 times the space of my little store. So now I gotta buy merchandise, more merchandise. So I ended up with all this merchandise, and I know that I've got some stuff in here, but you wouldn't believe the merchandise. This is nothing compared to the stuff I had in my store. Hundreds and hundreds of pieces of clothing, shoes. You have to keep changing out racks. You've got to make it look interesting when people come in. But the one thing that was super fun was that since I had changed my company name to Bubblegum Divas, I had this huge jar sitting right in the front at the register, and it was filled with bubble gum. And so that helped my store have a lasting memory on people who came in. Now, a lot of times moms, they'd just be looking with their kids, and the kids would start crying, I want this and I want that, because we had all kinds of tie animals, and we had bears, and we had all kinds of hair accessories and fun things. And what I learned about selling to Kitson's, which was a big store in LA where Paris Hilton would go to a lot, and a lot of the celebrities, one thing that the owner of Kitson's told me when he was buying my product, he said, people love to dig. People love to dig through and in things. So what we did in my store was we took a lot of bowls. I have one right here. Let me show it to you. It's a little bit dusty. This is dusty. But we would take a bowl like this, which I bought at a thrift store because I thought, I need a bunch of bowls. So I went to Walmart. Okay. So the owner of Kitson's told me that people like to dig. So I went to the thrift store and I bought this actual bowl. This used to be in my store amongst I don't know, probably 30, 40 more bowls. And the owner of Kitson's at the time, which was the biggest store for celebrities in Hollywood, he told me when he was buying my products for his store, he said, one thing that people like to do is dig. So I'm going to show you how we used to put our products in these bowls. Hold on. Okay, this bowl has been sitting here in this garage space for quite some time. So we would take a bowl like this and we would toss all of these accessories in the bowl like this here. You see this? So then if a mom or kid came to the store, they could just dig through and search through the bowls and find the fun things that they liked. And that worked really well for my store. I really like the idea. You can see this idea at Kitson's, but more of a mainstream store is Francesca's. If you have a Francesca's near you, that's kind of the concept that they have, is putting pieces in the bowls and letting people kind of sift through to find the things that they like. And people just, it's kind of like a treasure hunt, you know? So that was a piece of advice that he had told me, and that really worked well for us. So I ended up buying a lot of merchandise in the store, which some of it I still have. Have you gotten debt because you've bought way too much merchandise? Well, I can tell you that I'm a victim of that.